Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Kgshak Akec, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Kgshak Akec here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kgshak Akec. I am a South Sudanese-Australian writer, poet, and author of the novel Hopeless Kingdom. I am living and based in Geelong on Wathaurong country. So my story, I guess, begins in Medawi in North Sudan in 1997, where I was born. I was born to my mother and my father, and I was their fifth child. We lived in Sudan up until I was 3 years old, and then we moved to Egypt. And then from there, we stayed in Egypt from the year 2000, and in the year 2003, we moved to Australia. And when we moved to Australia, we lived in Sydney at the time. And it was in Sydney where I made friends, I learned English, all that fun stuff. And then in 2006, we moved to Geelong, where I now reside and I now call home. And so I guess my creative journey sort of began in primary school. Since I learned how to speak and write in English, I've always been fascinated with storytelling. I've always been fascinated with stories and writing out the stories that live inside my mind. I always found it, magical that these characters, these stories that I would come up with in my head, if I were to write them down, if I were to write these sequence of events, how they happened, to whom they happened to, and how they reacted to it, I found that when I wrote those things down, they were somehow immortalized, as time sort of went on and even as these stories sort of vanished within my mind as I, sort of grew, they would always remain the same. And so that, I guess, sort of passion and love and fascination with storytelling, especially in the written word, has, stuck with me ever since I discovered that it was a thing. And that was from the age of about 7. And so it's been almost a 20-year journey. And so, in primary school, always loved to read and to write stories. And as I got into high school, I started exploring different avenues in which these stories can be told. I took an interest in performing arts. I love doing visual arts. But, as I sort of went from year 7 to 12, exploring these different avenues, storytelling in the written word was always something that I kept coming back to. And so after I graduated year 12, after I graduated VCE, much like a lot of other migrant students, I decided that a career or taking a study in the arts was something that was going to be too risky. And so I decided to stick to what I was good at, and I did a degree in media and communication. And while I was doing my degree in media and communication, I was writing and publishing poetry and stories online under a pen name, and all these stories that I would write and publish. I loved doing that so much, and I gained an audience from that. And so I kept doing it. And where am I up to now? So come 2020, so I've graduated university. I work at a youth arts organization, and I'm the media and communications coordinator. And so while I'm doing that, I meet with a lot of the creatives in the Geelong area, and one of them happens to be somebody's daughter theatre company. And so I go along to some of their workshops, and I start exploring stories in the media, I guess, of or through the medium of theatre. And that was something that I never really quite tapped into. So I went at first as a participant. No, I went at first as an observer, and then I became a participant, and then I started writing my own stories, and then they would become part of the productions. And yeah, I saw myself on stage as a performer, reciting the words that I had written months prior, and I loved doing that in a collaborative sense. And while this was happening, I was still publishing stories online, and I was doing this up until 2020, where I left Australia for the first time since arriving here on my own. And I guess that journey made me look inward quite a lot, just because as a migrant, Australia is something that I guess we understand is our adopted home. Home is always somewhere elsewhere. Home is our parents' home. I guess we understand it. Home is the motherland. And I didn't realize that I understood Australia as home until I left Australia. And so I went to New Zealand, which is not that far away from Australia. And I went for just under 2 weeks. And in that journey, as I was sort of exploring New Zealand, as I was taking everything in, all these revelations, I guess, were coming up about where I understand home is. And, within the first couple of days, I was feeling really, really homesick. Of course, I was missing, mom, dad, I was missing my bedroom, all that kind of stuff, but it felt deeper than that. And so, I searched deeper within that to really tap into what that feeling was. And once, it wasn't until I got home that I discovered that, to me, home is Australia. It's not just mom and dad. It's not just my bedroom. It's not just the suburb that I grew up in. Home is this land here. And I guess once I opened that Pandora's box, all these feelings just sort of came out of it. And one of the things that is the end result is my novel Hopeless Kingdom. And so Hopeless Kingdom is a work of fiction, but it's heavily inspired by my journey, by my mother's journey, by my father's journey, by my family's journey of migration from Sudan to Egypt, and then Egypt to Australia. It's told through the interchanging perspectives of the mother character, her name's Tarasai, and her daughter Akita, who is 6, like I was when they come to Australia. And throughout the story, you follow them both along on their shared and separate journey of how they take in, how they react to, and how they are shaped by Australia. And I always like to think of it as a coming of age story for both Tarasai and Akita. At the start of the novel, Akita is 6 years old, and by the end, she's 21. At the start of the novel, Tarasai, the mother, is in her early 30s, and by the end, she's in her mid 50s. And yeah, it's one of those things where at the start, when I first started writing Hopeless Kingdom, it was a very, I guess, selfish journey, because I just wanted to write out what was going on in my heart and in my mind and in my soul. It felt like I was going through, I don't know, some sort of metamorphosis. And yeah, to me, to be able to understand what's happening inside internally, to write it out has always been like looking into a mirror. And so while I was doing that, yeah, I came to learn a lot about myself. Writing Hopeless Kingdom was very, very confronting, but it was also very, very comforting, because all the things that I guess I had experienced, and all the things that I had gone through in my childhood, being someone who is of African descent and is visibly Black and dark skin, growing up and living in Australia and calling this place my home, comes with a lot of baggage, and it takes years to unpack. And yeah, writing Hopeless Kingdom, I guess, addressed all those things that I was unpacking, and still am yet to unpack, and those that I Yeah, I guess things that I'm gonna strive to unpack in the future. But yeah, so ever since writing Hopeless Kingdom, I after I finished the journey from starting Hopeless Kingdom was very, very selfish. And by the time that I finished the novel, which was in a 3-month period during our first nationwide lockdown, I forgot to mention. Um, After I wrote it, I started it in March 2020, finished it in May 2020. I decided that this was the weight of the story, I guess, was much heavier than anything that I'd ever written, just because it was so close to, I guess, the bone. It was so close to my truth and so close to the truth of so many people around me. Stories that aren't usually told in contemporary Australian fiction, stories that voices that aren't usually heard. And so, yeah, by the time I finished writing Helpless Kingdom, I was sitting with this manuscript on my lap, and I knew that it had to go somewhere beyond my bedroom. It had to be read by people beyond my family. And so I started submitting it to different competitions and publishing houses that were open and looking for new and original work. And so I submitted it to the Vogel Award. I submitted to the Vogel Award in late May, my first draft, and I heard back in November saying that, no, in September, sorry. I heard back and they said that they'd found a winner, and unfortunately, it wasn't me. And so that was, of course, really, really hard to take because this story was so personal. It was really hard not to be like, they thought the story was crap, so I'm a crap writer, and my story is, my life is pretty much crap. But after those 2 weeks of sulking, I went back to Hopeless Kingdom, and I redrafted it, and I took out what I thought wasn't necessary and infused it with, I guess what I think, things that I didn't see initially. And then, yeah, through that process, I think it was about a month-long process, I came up with a second draft, and I submitted that second draft into the Dorothy Hewitt Award. Come March of 2021, a year after I started writing Hopeless Kingdom, I heard back from the Vogel Award, who previously said that, they picked him when it wasn't me. They said that Hopeless Kingdom, my manuscript was actually shortlisted, but they just couldn't tell me at the time. Within that same week, I heard back from the Dorothy Hewitt Award, and they selected Hopeless Kingdom as the joint winner of the 2021 Dorothy Hewitt Award, which came with a publishing contract with UWA Publishing. And so with a year, I worked with a fabulous team of people and learned so much. And within a 9-month period, the second draft of the manuscript that I'd come up with was turned into the novel that you can see in bookstores throughout Australia today. And that journey has been one that is still continuing, surprisingly, even though came out in August. It was published in August 2022. And yeah, I feel like I'm still riding that high. And I guess the most recent hurrah that I'm still celebrating is my Hopeless Kingdom being not only longlisted for last year's Miles Franklin Award, but also shortlisted. And with that, it's landed on so many people's laps, across Australia and even, locally. I got an Instagram message a few days ago that my neighbor is now reading the book. And yeah, stuff like that just really touches, yeah, it pulls on the heartstrings, but also, I guess, burns the fire in my belly to continue writing these stories that aren't usually seen throughout Australia and continue to champion those voices that aren't usually heard.
Good job. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. What an incredible journey you've been on.
Thank you.
Now, tell me about home, your family. How many siblings do you come from? Where do you draw your strength? You must have a lot of support from your family, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The strongest support system that I know is my family. So there's mom and dad, and there's I've got 9 siblings, and I fall directly in the middle. So I've got 4 older siblings and 4 younger siblings.
Okay.
Typical large African family. And the thing is, being the middle child, my eldest brother is nearly in his 40s and my youngest brother just turned 16. And so it's like,
Oh,
because you're in
wow.
the, yeah, because you're in the middle, you sort of get so many different versions of your family, so many different, I
Yes.
guess, incarnations, I guess, of your family, because you watch as the older siblings get older and the younger
Yeah.
siblings are getting older too, but at a different rate. But yeah, I mean, I love my family so so much. And yeah, throughout this journey of writing Hopeless Kingdom, and even it being published, my mum, and also of course my dad, but my mum was almost like my counsel the whole time. And yeah, I guess the two of them together, my parents, since as young as I can remember, they've always instilled in all of us kids to just, yeah, shoot for the stars and let nothing stop you.
So you didn't see any limitations, really?
Absolutely not. The only limitations I saw were the ones that, were coming from me. I'd put these, I
Yes.
guess, pressures on myself that didn't really exist, or I would create these barriers that weren't really there.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, from talking to my mother, talking to my father, talking to my sisters and my friends, yeah, they would all just say the same thing. And so, yeah, once I sort of let those walls dissolve, it was all good. There was nothing stopping me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, in Hopeless Kingdom, you explore the relationship between a mother and a daughter.
Yes.
How does this dynamic reflect the broader themes of settlement and adaptation to new lands?
Mm. Well, I really wanted to explore, I guess, what it is like to migrate to Australia from another country and
Yeah.
settle here and this be your forever home through the perspective, through the female perspective. And I wanted to look at it specifically through the mother and the daughter, through the lens of a mother and a daughter, and give the two of them equal voices in the story, because this really, really interesting thing happens when, families migrate to Australia with young children. Those young children grow up in Australia and they adapt to the Australian culture. They speak like their Australian friends. They eat the food that their Australian friends are eating. They dress how their peers are dressing. And their
Yeah.
parents sort of, in a much more subtle way, do that. Well, I guess don't do that really. They stick much to their roots, they stick to their heritage, and which has been so heavily instilled in them. They're still so connected to their motherland and their culture
Yes.
and their traditions. And so, because you have those two things sort of coexisting in the same household and the same family, there's
Mm.
this sort of there's a friction that sort of occurs. And I mean, it certainly occurred with me and my parents and all my siblings, and my parents and all my migrant friends and their parents. It's like the generation that grows up in Australia doesn't see things the way that our
Same.
parents do. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that, in a lot of ways, means that things are going to be bitter. Things are going to be sour. People are going to be misunderstood because you can't see each other on an equal level, because
Yeah.
mum's over here and dad's over here and you're all the way over here. And so
Yeah.
it's a lot of, I guess, work that happens in both parties to sort of be able to see eye to eye, but so much more work has to be put in than, say, if we were still living in Sudan, or say if we came here 2 generations ago. So yeah, I thought that would be really, really interesting to explore.
So, how important was it for you to represent South Sudanese experiences and stories in your writing, particularly in an Australian context?
It was so important to me, really, really important to me. And at first, I was actually skeptical about how many people would actually want to read this story, because for so long it's felt like the African communities, specifically Sudanese communities in Victoria and broader
Yeah.
Australian regions, our voice and how we're reflected in Australia, it hasn't been, we haven't had any autonomy in that. It
No.
hasn't been our own voice. It's always been people speaking for us. It's always been
Yes.
people speaking on us. It's never been, people from our own communities really standing up and, holding the microphone and saying, this is who we are. It's always been other people. And so when I was writing this book, I didn't let anyone or anything take that power away from me. You know, I didn't feel like I needed to dilute what it was actually like to be Sudanese in Australia. I didn't want to sanitize, I guess,
Your
any of it, the good,
experience.
the bad, I didn't want to do any of that. And so that was a real driving force, because I also was thinking about, if this book was actually, if this manuscript got turned into a book and it was read by people across Australia, this is only going to empower people in my communities to do the same, and they're
Yeah.
also going to feel seen as well. And that for me was something that was so important to do, and something that drove me to do it.
Yeah, yeah. So, what were some of the challenges that you faced while writing about sensitive topics such as immigration, heartache, and triumph? Especially coming from a refugee background,
Yep.
there's a lot of generational trauma in terms of
Yeah.
experience. What was
Yeah.
that like?
It was very confronting. It was really, really confronting, especially because I don't think I was prepared for it.
Right.
Sort of, I was going into it, and I was, I guess, discovering the things that were going on internally in real time. And
Yes.
it wasn't until I read a chapter back that I was like, oh, that's how I feel about that. Oh, those were the feelings that I was pushing down for the past 10, 15 years. And
Yes.
so, yeah, it was extremely confronting. But, I found a lot of solace in being able to speak about these things with my mother. If I found something particularly troubling, I talk
Yeah.
about it to my sisters, or I'd close my laptop and I'd give myself time to, I guess, untangle those untangle the threads, or I guess just come to a place where I'm able to move forward. And when I couldn't, I guess it was really, really important for me to just stop and take a breath, and take a minute, just because I knew the importance of this story, but also a lot of the things that I wrote about were things that I was still dealing with, or things that I hadn't dealt with. And so it became a thing where my mental health was as equally as important as honoring this story. And so I guess doing both really, really well helped me in, I guess, writing the story and completing it, and doing the best job that I could do.
So, how do you think storytelling, particularly through novels like yours, can enhance understanding and empathy towards the immigrant experiences?
I guess with any story where you're honoring the truth
Hmm.
of what honoring the truth of what the story is, honoring I guess the reality of what things are, because Australia likes to, I guess, paint this image that we're so multicultural, we're so diverse, and every single person from every single shade, from every single culture, from every walk of life is embraced. But that's not the reality. And I
No.
guess, and a lot of people who don't experience those things, a lot of people who don't, experience racism or microaggression, or who aren't, treated a different way because of the way they look or the way they sound or where they come from, they don't
They
know.
do.
They have
Yeah.
no clue. And I
Mm.
think even though it can be hard to hear those things about a place that you love so much, or a community that you love so much, or a place that you identify with, I think
Yes.
it needs to be done, because I think the only way that we can move forward as a society is if we call out the really terrible things that happen to communities in
Yes.
our country. And so, that part for me, I guess, was because I was young when I was 20. I was 22, 23 when I wrote Hopeless Kingdom. And it was really hard for me to be able to, call these things out to such a broader community,
Yeah.
knowing that I'll probably receive backlash, or I'll probably receive hate for saying this kind of stuff, because a lot of people are in denial. But um, I think, doing it in a way that, honors the truth of it,
Yeah.
and calls
Yeah.
things
Say
out
it.
as they are, I think is, I guess, the best way to do it. The only way to really do it, to, I guess, move forward. Yeah. And hopefully it encourages people instead of just, makes them feel down about it.
Yeah. So, as a performing artist and storyteller, how do you intertwine your art with advocacy for immigrant communities and issues?
Well, working in, community theater for 5.5 years, and, getting on stage and playing this character and really speaking the truth of the character and speaking their story has really helped me. And, being able to write my own stories. I guess it's given me, I guess, the technical skills. But the other side of that is because I have performed for 5 years, and at the start, I would have crazy stage fright and be so nervous and just like buzzing the night before a performance that I just would not sleep. That has equipped me with the skills where I'm able to confidently say, get up on stage and speak at a conference where we're talking about the importance of having diversity in, schools, diverse novels, sorry, diverse stories
Gotcha.
in schools.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. How and I'm able to, be sit at a table and know that confidently know and feel that I know what I'm talking about, and feel like I deserve a seat at the table, and feel like, I need to that I deserve to be in those rooms where these important conversations are being had. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, yeah, being in performing arts, and, doing multiple plays and playing these characters has equipped me with the skills to be able to do public speaking. And now the only difference is, instead of playing a character and singing or reciting poetry, I
You're
guess
being
just
you.
being me, and I'm speaking
Yeah.
from the heart. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm really loving that at the moment.
That is just awesome. So,
Yeah.
since the release of Hopeless Kingdom, what has been the most impactful feedback or response that you've received from readers?
Um, that's a really hard one. I guess I was really surprised that people who weren't Sudanese Australian, or people who weren't African Australian, could pick up the book and, feel their pain in feel the pain of Tarasai, of Akita, of Santo, feel the pain of the characters, feel their joy, and, just have their stories resonate with them and relate with them. I got a message not too long ago. I think it was in October of last year. I got a message from a woman in her 70s, who lives in the west side of Australia,
Okay.
Western Australia. And she said to me that she loved the book so, so much. And Sancho in the story reminded her of her little brother who'd passed away when they were young. And he struggled with addiction as well. So and also, of course, getting feedback from, young Sudanese girls from my communities, um,
Yes.
how awesome it is to see an author that looks like them, who's doing all these amazing things. So it's like the feedback from people from all walks of life, who look like
Yes.
people that look like me, people who don't look like me, men, women, young girls, young boys who've read the book and really connect to the story and these characters. I don't think I could pluck a single one that I guess has touched my heart more than the other. But I guess just in a broader sense, to know that this story that I wrote can connect to not a certain group of people, but everyone.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. So, how has your South Sudanese heritage influenced your approach to writing, storytelling, and performing?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really know. I guess like Sudanese people, a lot like a lot of other African people from a lot of different African cultures, we are, storytellers by nature. We tell
Nature,
stories
yes.
through our songs, we tell stories through our dance. We are natural born storytellers. And from as
Yes.
young as I can remember, I was always told a story to go to sleep. I was sung a song by my grandmother. So I guess we're naturally, artistic and performing. What am I trying to say? We're naturally artistic and, rooted, I guess, in the performing arts. And I guess that's really that runs deep in our ancestry. And I guess when I was addressing the story of Hopeless Kingdom, I drew a lot of that, I guess, ancestral, spiritual knowing, I guess, out to
Yes.
write Hopeless Kingdom. And I really, I guess, I felt guided a lot of the time. It felt like I was channeling a lot of, especially Tarasai's voice. And so I was very grateful for that. And I guess I just I allowed that the spirits, the ancestors to guide me. Yeah, in honoring Hopi Kingdom. And so, yeah, I guess that's how.
That was just awesome. So, are there any themes or stories that you are particularly eager to explore in your future writing or performing arts projects?
Absolutely. I would love to keep writing. I'd love to keep writing stories about told through the female perspective. I'd love to do that, but not limited to. But I'd also love to tell stories from our communities. I'd love to keep writing works of fiction that are inspired by everyday stories of migrants, everyday stories of African Australians, everyday stories of, yeah, stories that come out of this great big land that we all call home, and people and different people that I guess sort of pop out of it. And yeah, I've been finding that while I've been working on my second book, I've been so inspired by just the people that I've met every single day and the places that I've traveled throughout Victoria. And I'd love to, I guess, write stories where those inspirations sort of pop out at you and jump at you. And yeah.
I love it. So, any advice to aspiring writers from immigrant backgrounds? What advice would you give writers, especially for those from immigrant backgrounds who wish
Yeah.
to tell their stories?
I'd say just do it. Your story is so unique and there's such a hunger for it. It may not feel like it because there's there could be extra hurdles that you have to jump through just because of the uniqueness of your story, but there's such a prominent hunger and there's so many opportunities if you know, I guess, where to look or how to look. But
Yes.
if you open the door and you peek outside, there's so many opportunities for these stories. So I think just do it. Just do it. Don't let anything hold you back. Seek, I guess, keep your family close with you, especially if you're telling a story that's close to your heart. And also, yeah, just never feel like you have to dilute your voice or wash down or wash out your story and who you are.
And do you offer any mentoring services? Are you supporting any African immigrants? Because I'll be your first client.
I'm not at the moment, but I've been since October of last year, which is not that long ago now. I have been opening, I guess, I'm very open to mentoring young writers and young African
And
creators.
old writers too, don't we?
Of course. My doors are wide open. Yeah, I'm really open to working with other people because I'm so passionate I'm so passionate for the written word.
Your story inspired me. I have to tell you, I started writing again when I heard about you. I read your book, and this is why I reached out to you to do this interview.
Oh,
It's an inspiration. Thank you for who you're
thank
being in
you
the
so
world.
much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you voices from right across the globe, inspiring people who are celebrating their difference. We are all different, but we are all the same.
Yes.
So come back again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks again for the interview, Kgshak.
Thank you so much, Gertrude.
Bye for now, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep